Welcome to Sensual Secrets, where we talk about how you can live in pleasure by embracing your feminine energy, finding and nurturing a deeply loving relationship, and growing into the best version of yourself. My name is Lieke Seles, and I will be your host, guiding you on this intimate journey of self-discovery. I hope you really enjoy, and please subscribe. It would mean so much to me. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to a new episode of Sensual Secrets. Today I want to talk about the voice inside of our head and how we can firstly become more aware of that voice to then use it to our own benefit and the benefit of the world around us. So to get started, do you know what the voice in your head sounds like? Are you even aware of the voice inside of your head? And if you're not, why don't we together just close our eyes and take a moment to focus on that inner voice? Place your attention on that voice and become aware of what it sounds like. What is the tone of your inner voice? Does it sound happy, uplifting? Or is it cruel, mean? Does it put you down? Is it degrading? Once we start to become more and more familiar with our inner voice, we can also specifically start to investigate certain situations. In which situations, for example, do you lift yourself up? Do you praise yourself? Do you applaud yourself? And in which situations are you still harsh on yourself? Or even downright mean to yourself? Because I know that I used to be so cruel to myself. Even just not a few years ago, quite some years ago, I noticed at a certain point when I was in a tough time in a relationship that wasn't working well anymore, I was beating myself up. I was at the time sitting in my van, sitting on the floor of my van, just crying and talking in this way to myself that I couldn't imagine myself doing today. I was so mean. I would say the meanest things that I could think of. And I wouldn't be good enough for anything. I wouldn't be beautiful enough. I wouldn't be smart enough. I wouldn't be a nice person. I wouldn't be worthy of anything. And I was going on this rampage, on and on and on, in a negative spiral. Until at some point, I just thought to myself, what am I doing? This has to stop. I decided then and there that I don't want to speak to myself like that anymore. That's the moment that it all started changing for me. Then my reality started changing, and my inner being, my inner happiness, my inner peace started really turning around, moving in an upward spiral. I think that becoming aware of the voice inside of your head is one of the biggest things you can do for yourself. It's one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself over this holiday period. Because the moment you start to become more aware of it, that's the moment you can start working with it. Firstly, you have to be able to observe it, to see what it's like, to see how it acts in certain situations, to see how it distracts you from reality, how it creates a blurred vision, a really subjective reality perceptions, and that might take you away from what is actually true, or it might take you away from happiness. Because the more you are aware of the voice inside of your head, the more you can let it work in your benefit, the more that you can focus on generating positive thought forms, on creating beautiful stories, and in the meantime, letting go of the stories that hold you back. You can actively become aware and train yourself to generate more positivity and more happiness and more inner peace. And when you let your inner voice work in your benefit, when you work together with it and you create a beautiful collaboration, that will benefit the world as well. So simply take a step back and observe. Take a step back out of the ego and become aware of the content of the mind, of the quality of the mind, by taking on an observer perspective, so that you become conscious of how it generally acts, and then you can evaluate for yourself if this is beneficial to you or if it's actually blocking you from flourishing. And one thing that might help you in doing that is imagine yourself talking to your best friend. Imagine you being your best friend and evaluate the way that you are speaking to yourself. Compare it to the way that you would speak to your best friend and see what makes the cut. Imagine yourself being a beautiful friend, of course. So that then, is this the way that you would help a best friend? Is this the way that you would uplift a best friend? Would you be cruel and mean to a best friend? Probably not. So evaluate your thoughts and compare it to the way that you would speak to the people that you love most. Most of the times we tend to go over the same stories, the same memories, the same situations, the same ideas, the same dreams, past or future. And our mind just feeds off of it and it takes you away from the present moment. And so when we become aware of those stories that we tend to go back to, our patterns that keep going on in our head over and over again, then you can evaluate if these patterns are helpful for you or if they aren't. And when they're not, when these are kind of limiting beliefs or these are negative stories that you are telling yourself, you can start by catching yourself in the moment when these stories are happening and say, wait a second, take a step back, observe the story that is going on, and realize that you actually don't need this story. This story is just something that you are telling yourself, and you might as well tell yourself the opposite and turn that story around and make it into a positive. For example, when you say in certain situations, oh, I will never be able to do that, or I can't do that because I'm like this, you are creating your identity based on the stories that you're telling yourself. So instead of creating those negative stories or those limiting beliefs, you catch yourself and you turn it around into a positive. And instead of saying you can't, you can say, I can. Of course I can. If I want to, I can. I can do anything I want in the world. And I will try to make it happen. And if in your daily life a situation occurs and you have been telling yourself the opposite and you've been training mentally to react in a different way, to break with your pattern from the past, in that moment when this situation occurs, it will be so much easier to actually implement that new behavior into reality because you have been practicing it mentally over and over again. And your mind doesn't know the difference between a memory or something that you've been making up. So you can actually visualize yourself into a different future. You can think yourself into a different future. And you can then integrate this into the material world by actually applying it when the time is right. And that is how you can start consciously creating your own reality, your personal reality and everything around you. Because everything you see around you once started with an idea, a thought. Every building that you see built, obviously not nature, but every business that you see around you once started as a seed of an idea, as a thought in someone's mind. And they have been working on that thought, watering the thought, nourishing it so that it can flourish, so that it can grow step by step into reality. And so I invite you that from today, from this moment on, you become more aware and more in tune with the voice inside of your head. And in those moments that it's not supporting you or your life or the creation of your dream life, or the benefit of people around you or the world around you, you say stop. No more. I don't want this. I don't need this. This is not how I want to create suffering for myself if I could choose happiness. You stop thinking about those negative stories, stop feeding it, and you turn it around into a positive story. You turn the no I can't around into yes I can. And you do that over and over again. And yes, changing your thought patterns, the voice inside your head, your environment, your life, it does require effort. You have to put in the effort, the energy, the attention to be aware and to create that change actively until you do this over and over again and it becomes your new you. Your realities start changing. You start to embody the yes I can. You start to become a living example of it. Your confidence starts to grow and you become an inspiration for others to do the same. Let's start today by becoming aware and saying no more to the negative self-talk, to the cruelty of your mind. And let's start flourishing together, turning every negative story around into a positive, so that you can create your dream life, your dream version of yourself, step by step, by putting in the work, by putting in the effort. And in 3 years' time, you will look back and you won't even recognize your old self and see how far you have come by adding up all of those little steps. And know that change doesn't happen overnight. You have to put in the effort every day for you to create a new reality. And the progress won't be linear. Some days you'll go back to beating yourself up, and that's okay. As long as you set the intention to try your best, to try your hardest, and you forgive yourself in the moments that you take a step back instead of forward, that is the road to progress. Without linearity, taking 2 steps forward, maybe 1 step back, and then 3 steps forward and 1 step back. So that in every little moment you are aware of what is happening, of the progress. You show compassion for yourself when you're taking a step back. And you keep patting yourself on the shoulder for all of the progress that you've made. Because all of these steps will add up and create a brighter reality for you. A happier reality in which you will find more and more inner peace, accomplishments, fulfillment, purpose, and so on. So let's get started today. And I'll leave it at that. Have a beautiful day.